Alrighty everyone, Furina is coming back very soon. I know that many of us do love her. I love her a lot myself, which is why she is one of the most invested character on my account. But today is a video dedicated to her again, looking into whether or not she's still pretty much a worth it character for us to be investing into her at the current point. Because there's so many not Krai characters that are coming, so many supportive characters that you have to look into your investment. So spend your Primos gems wisely is something we all have to consider. So sit back, relax and enjoy the video. If you find the video helpful, do consider subscribing, as 90% of you guys aren't subscribed and it is a free way to support me and the channel. With that, let's just dive right in. Nefer, as well as so many other amazing not Krai character, is going to be coming soon, and I know that many of you are trying to get them. So if you're planning to swipe for pooling, then don't forget to check out Loot Bar. If you know me, I've been recommending you guys Loot Bar before, since you can always save almost a 25% on all of your top-ups. With over 100,000 orders and so many good reviews at this point, you can be sure that Loot Bar is trustworthy. Here you can see my order receipts of all of my top-ups that I have done. A 6.0 is the anniversary patch. Loot Bar is holding a special discount for the all-in-one bundle, and it's actually a pretty nice discount. Other than that, you will also be able to claim 15% coupon as well as 2-3% coupons for the rewards as well. So guys, be sure to check out Loot Bar through the link in my description, as it can be a great way for you to save your money, especially if you are topping up a large amount. Now, I'm pretty sure most of you know what Furina actually does, so I'm not going to be going through much in depth into that. But do remember, all of the strength regarding Furina is that she has amazing off-field damage. She's one of the best sub DPS character out there in the game, with the fact that she can summon her E-skill minion and they automatically do off-field damage for you guys without you normally having to weave in your normal attack like Yelan or Xingqiu. But on top of her sub DPS ability, she can go ahead and support your team with increasing your damage through her elemental burst, though it does have a bit of a downside because it does take time for it to charge up unless you invest into her constellations. And her burst goes for 18 seconds, which is a pretty long time. On top of that, it buffs your entire team swell, which is absolutely perfect. She does have access to hydro application without you having to do anything, so that's the good side of it. Now the bad side is that her hydro application isn't that great, so depending on your team, you will have to adjust your rotation slightly. She does drain your team HP in order for her to buff her E-skill damage quite a bit, so depending on whether or not you have a healer on your team, that can be a bit of a problem at times. And without proper healing, her E-skill won't get to the maximum damage output potential, so that's going to be a downside that we have to look into whenever we team build Furina. So yeah, all of her upsides currently still sounds amazing, but many players have been feeling that Furina has been falling off and a little bit outdated in the recent meta, because while Furina provides team-wide damage bonus buff and hydro application, she kind of lacks the specialization needed to compete with a newer supports. For if we look into individually comparison between sub DPS character and supportive that have recently been added to the game, there are many of them who are more specifically built for certain teams in character. For example, we recently have Escoffier for Skirk, Inefa for Flins, Lauma for Bloom, and most likely for Nefer whenever she comes. Some newer information regarding Durin for potential Vaporized Team, the Hexen Soko character, Alice later on potentially, Columbina for pretty much not Krai character kind of gameplays, Furina as more of a generalist buffer. Individually, when it comes to supportive character, her kit will not compete with these kind of specific supportive team building. And this already has started a while back when Shilonen and Sitlali was introduced into the game. What Furina excels at though is making weaker teams become more viable, because she tends to not be the best options for most of the strongest character out there in the game. For example, Mavuika, Alakino, some newer Luna teams, you know, Flins, Lauma, those kind of character. The main exception though being character like a Novelet, Navia, or if we're still using some of the other Pyro character like Neely and Hutao. Those are some of the few DPS characters that actively love Furina as their support, or together with Escoffier for example, who actively does like Furina as her teammate due to their synergy. So to put it simply, Furina is kind of like a fit or tape for teams that don't have the ideal options on your account. And that's that's quite a bit of a problem, considering that there's so many good supportive characters out there that you still need to think to either pull for them or invest in, right? Like, for example, Shilonen, who's also a bit of an all-team buffer character. However, Shilonen is a lot more easier to use for, you know, the 40% instant buff with the resistant shred that Shilonen actively give. She also is a healer of a character that Furina can't actively do in the team unless you change her mode. And investing more into Shilonen obviously is one of the best constellation for supportive in the game up until this point. You know, other character, if you are more specialized in melt kind of teams, then Sitlali is a really strong option with a 20% pyro and hydro resistant shred. And also, if she's on the scroll, that's a 40% damage bonus. Escoffier, when it comes to cryo teams, especially for Skirk, we're still using her. Obviously, again, as we've mentioned, Furina and Escoffier would love to be on the same team. However, we are talking about individually supportive character comparison here currently. So if you're using a cryo team specifically, Escoffier is most likely the character that you want to focus more on, because there are some other hydro options, you know, like Xingqiu, Free to Play, or Yelan you probably already have that can be built into your Escoffier Skirk team. Or recently, when it comes to not Krai, in FR for Flints, if you're using Flints, you definitely would love to invest more into an NFR than other character options at the current point, and especially Lauma, even though she has already passed her banner, but one of the best Lunar Bloom enabler for your team. And if you want Nefer, you will probably want to save up for your Lauma. Now, future character, you know, for example, Durin Columbina is expected to be really nice in Vaporized teams. For Durin and Columbina, that's a bit of a problem. If she turns out to be an excellent hydro supportive character on her release, this is again all speculations, then Furina in the meta is probably gonna go down quite significantly, because again, you only have 4 team members on the team and you can't always slot all the characters that you like. Now, that is us discussing the situation of Furina's skill and kit comparison solely with other supportive characters. However, in truth, when we look into team comps building wise, since Furina is a really good sub DPS and have access to nice supportive capabilities, the viewpoint can actually change a bit, because whenever we build a team in Genshin Impact, there are 4 characters. Generally, 1 slot is only for the DPS. The other 3 remaining slots are for supportive character. So Furina will still be able to find her place in many of the team comps for you to be using up a sub DPS slot on that specific team, because of again how good her damage increase is and sub DPS capability that you don't have to do anything, you just leave her there and she will add additional damage onto your team. So looking to some of the specific team comps that Furina still shine, honestly we still do have a number of them. Like for example, the new Villette Hypercarry team with Furina, Shilonen and Kazuha, for example, we're still using that team. It is an excellent team. Navia team, where you have Navia, Bennett, Furina and Shilonen, one of the best Navia team out there that we have. Hu Tao, Double Hydro with Furina, Yelan and Shilonen. Lini team, if you're still using Lini, then Lini, Furina, Bennett and a Shilonen, for example. Or if you want a bit of more toward the monocons, then Shangling on the last slot for Lini team is still really nice. For Cloran team with Furina, Fischl and Shilonen, that team is still great. Or well, if you're looking toward a specific Kokomi mono hydro team with Kokomi, Furina, Yelan, Shilonen, for example, a very decent team for Kokomi. Some other specific team comps with your DPS like Xiao, Farazan, Furina and Xianjun, literally the best Xiao team out there in the game. Raiden, Furina, National alongside with Shangling and Bennett. If you can keep that up, it is a pretty decent team for Raiden. Specific Mavuika team will still be using Furina, where you can have Mavuika, Furina, Bennett and Shilonen in certain cases. Yes, that is really good. And yes, the newer Cryo team with Skirk, Escoffier, Furina and a Shanhe. Those are some of the previous team that Furina has been working absolutely amazingly and still really nice at the current point. Moving into the not Krai synergy system though. Premium Lauma Nilou team can actually have your Furina alongside with Lauma, Furina, Nilou, and Nahida, for example, provided that you do have a C1 Lauma, of course. However, for future Nefer team, for example, there can be certain situations where you can have Nefer, Lauma, Furina, and Kokomi in the healing slot. That would definitely work. If you want Lauma Hyper Bloom alongside with Furina and Inafa, last slot being either Nahida or Kokomi, depending on whether or not you have a C1 Lauma, has been working exceptionally well together with the introduction of Lunar Bloom and Lunar Charge. Interesting team comps that we can consider. Furina can also work on the Flint's team too, together with Inefa, Flint's, and the last slot being either Sucrose, Kazuha, if you can survive Flint's with Inefa, or the last slot can actually be Shilonen for a bit of a more damage increase. Now, technically not the best Flint's team out there because generally he does love to have more of an EM buff, and Shilonen and Furina is giving out a damage increase. So again, obviously not the best Flint's team, but it does have a bit of a variant in terms of if you like doing a mixture of damage increase for Furina and as well as Flint's. But we're just providing a number of team comps out there for you to be choosing when it comes to team building. Alright, so most of the things we've been discussing up until this point is regarding a C0 Furina level, and of course, there has been a lot of downside to a C0 Furina. For the time required for her to get the maximum damage increase for your team can take quite a bit of time, which is why Furina, compared to many of the supportive characters that we have access to in the game out there, is not going to be as valuable. However, things that change quite a lot whenever you do invest into a Furina Constellation. For I'm someone who do have a C3 Furina. I've been using her for a long time, so I know the impact that a Constellation Furina does have toward herself and her team comps as well. When we hit a C1 level, apart from increasing the potential buff amount by Furina's max fanfare limit, you're technically already having an instant 38% damage bonus upon casting her elemental burst, which increases the average buff size over a rotation already, but it also helps her charge up the stack slightly faster, for she is having an 15% incoming healing bonus right at the start of her burst. Therefore, C1 can be quite valuable for her. However, it's not until her C2 that generally I'd say she reached the maximum potential, because it multiplies the amount of fanfare stack you gain by 3.5%, or in other words, the moment you cast her elemental burst, it already basically allowed her to get the maximum damage increase for your whole entire team. And on top of that, her own damage capability is also getting increased, because most of the time you're going to get way above the fanfare stack limit, therefore increasing her maximum HP by a lot, and you will be able to hit that 140% maximum HP increase, which is roughly a 60% personal damage increase to your Furina when you hit a C2 already. And while at the C3 level, I think many of us won't be reaching at that point because it does require you to have quite a bit of an investment. However, if you do, it's basically another 25% increase to your overall team damage, because this focuses on a team supportive capability, so C3 is really much valuable. Now, the rest of her constellation though isn't too much of an importance, and if you do have the capability to actually get to that point, you're probably going to be C6ing her anyway. So yes, her constellation value for herself is really good. So if you do love Furina, you invest into her, I can guarantee you that you will be very happy with your Furina. Now, that being said, it comes down to the question of investment once again, because as we've discussed, Furina as a supportive character individually comparing to other supportive character is going to be a bit of a question. So again, the question comes, if you do have enough Primos gems to be investing into a constellation, maybe it would be better off either saving your Primos gems for potential other future characters, or going ahead and invest into the more specific supportive character in the teams that you are using a lot on your account. Shilonen, Escoffier, Zitlali, Lauma, those kind of characters all have really insanely good constellation. So yes, again, it is a question of how you're going to be choosing to use your Primos gems on your account, but just do keep in mind that there are other options for us to look into out there. And so with a lot of discussion toward Furina at this point, there's been a lot of questions regarding, will Furina be back at a top tier beta level, or will she be power crept further into the future, and all the future proving kind of question out there. Now again, from character release standpoint, most of the time it is really hard for the character to be back in top of the top meta tier, especially when if we look into not Krai, there is definitely going to be a more supportive character that focuses a lot onto not Krai character region release as a whole, just similar to how Natlan region was last year. So the question of Furina being power creep in the future is definitely going to be a thing. The only question would be how long before she actively gets power creep. And that's where, you know, there has been a lot of questions and talks about Columbina being that specific character. But yes, we still have to wait until we have more concrete information about Columbina before we can make a say in this. But what I can say about Furina though is that, again, you don't always need to have the best of the best meta character in Genshin for you to clear the content. Furina herself will always be a really nice sub DPS character that can hydro application for your team and supportive your team really well. That is going to be a fact until the rest of the game. So if you do like Furina, still go ahead and pull for her, because personally I love my Furina. I love her as a character. I've been playing around with her for a very long time, which is why I invest into her constellations also. And yes, if you do invest into the character that you like constellation wise, they are going to be in the meta for a much longer time and you can play around with them a lot longer. So that, yes, is going to be the question depending on your account and your personal preference. I'm just going to be laying all the information out there to help you guys decide. So hopefully the video have been helping you out. That's all I have to say regarding Furina values at the current point. If you do have any question, guys, leave it down in the comment section and I or some other lovely Genshin players will get to you there. Again, guys, if you are new to the channel, do consider subscribe to the channel as it is a free way to support me and not miss out on my future Genshin videos. With that, I wish you a super day and I'll catch you on my next video.